And hello, movie lovers, and welcome to the show. And tonight I'm going to be reviewing Jason Pitts' new film, Voorhees, Night of the Beast. This is actually his passion project. He loves the Friday the 13th franchise. So, with further ado, let's go on ahead. Let's get on with it. I'm excited to talk about this film. And hello, movie lovers. And like I said, I'm going to be reviewing Voorhees, Night of the Beast. This is actually Jason Pitts' indie project that he's been trying to create for a little bit now. And finally, it's here for everybody to enjoy. Now, this had a budget of $15,000. And I just want to point out this doing any kind of indie project is actually hard to do because you're actually having to budget and try to pay your actors, costume designers, and everything else. So doing a project like this is actually hard to do. Plus, you also have to do a GoFundMe. You have to do all this other stuff. But that being said, there are some things that I have to say that I really liked about this film. For instance, you actually have a character. He wakes up. His name is Mark, and he's dealing with nightmares from Camp Crystal Lake because of the events that happened with him with Jason. And then, of course, you wind up seeing his girlfriend played by Olivia Disney. And Olivia was actually on my show. And I just have to say, I think she's going to be the standout when it comes down to horror films and things like that because she knows how to actually deliver something whenever it comes down to horror movies. And also, too, this time she's not playing a rage psychopath or anything like that. This time she's playing actually a survivor who's actually trying to help somebody cope with their anxiety and also the PTSD and trying to be there for Mark as his girlfriend. So that's something that I really have to say that worked for me was the chemistry between Mark and Chrissy. Mark and Chrissy's relationship actually works for me. But also too, this is also where I feel like now, this is actually a little bit of a con right now for me because this is only going to be like a little rough draft of the movie that Jason's actually sent to me. So I'm not sure if we're going to see a little bit of an extended version later on. But for me, this part just didn't work for me. It's where Chrissy's heart is in the right place, of course, because she wants to help her boyfriend out. So what does she do? She winds up blindfolding him and taking a guy that has PTSD over to the Camp Crystal Lake area so he can confront his demons. And to me, that's just something you just don't do. Even our own friends that are like, and this is what I like about Jason. He actually brings it up, and our friends are like, "Hey, is there something really wrong with you here? You're bringing a guy, you're blindfolding him, and bringing him back to where he doesn't even want to go." And also, too, um, this is another thing I have to say is the dialogue to me just needs to be polished up a little bit and brushed up. And I think that it would actually be really good because some of the acting, I have to say, is one dimensional, very one note. That's just me. And I understand that these characters are going to be forgettable later on because they're supposed to be somewhat some characters are supposed to be killed off, and I understand that I totally do. But I just want to be invested into the characters just a little bit more. But I have to say the guy who plays the black friend and everything inside this movie did a really good job with his acting abilities. I thought that was actually pretty good, and he his basically he was a standout for me. But whenever you look at that aspect of the boyfriend having the PTSD and things like that, you don't blindfold somebody, and bring them over to Camp Crystal Lake. You're just asking for problems. But still, this is a horror movie, so therefore you have to pretty much go with that. So then you also have Eddie, which is also Ralph's cousin from Friday the 13th, which I thought that was actually pretty cool that Jason actually paid a little bit of homage to the Friday the 13th series by doing it that way. Because basically, what Ralph would do is he would go up inside the this little restaurant, this little diner, and tell people, "Hey, look, do not go to Camp Crystal Lake. It's haunted. You do not want to go there." And of course, teenagers being teenagers, they go anyways. So I thought that was actually pretty cool how he actually pays homage to his love franchise for Friday the 13th. So I thought that was really cool on how he actually does that. Now, there's actually a little bit of a twist that Jason talked about in the interview. And this time, they're bringing in Bigfoot. And bringing in Bigfoot to me was actually a pretty interesting thing because now everybody's like, well, who should Jason fight next? Should it be Freddy? Should it be Michael Myers, Candyman, etc.? But you have um Sasquatch. You actually have Bigfoot in this movie, and I was like, okay, what's the motivation behind that for them to fight? That's the big thing. It's one thing to have these characters in there, but how do you get them to face off against each other? What is the beef between Michael Myers? I'm not Michael Myers, but between Jason and Sasquatch. What's the beef with that? Because in order for these two characters to fight, they have to have some type of motivation to fight, not just for the sake of fighting because we want to see it because it's cool, but but still. So this is another thing too. Lance, no back and forth. Here's another thing that I want to bring up too. I feel like this, and Jason mentioned this inside the group chat too, that when the poachers arrive, that's supposed to be killing Bigfoot arrives. Now there is a piece that's to the puzzle that's actually missing, and so therefore I don't know if that's going to be this is the missing piece or not, but I'm just going to go with it anyways. So basically there's no back and forth before the poachers arrive, and then all of a sudden Lance just comes out of nowhere and goes, so are you going to tell me about this story or not? And I'm like, okay, dude, all of a sudden you have Tourette's. What's going on with you? What's up with you? All of a sudden you just tell the lead poacher tell you the story of Camp Crystal Lake. What was the back and forth before that, before they actually arrived? I wanted a little bit more of a back and forth story about why this guy wants to poach. Why give a little bit more of a background on him. I understand this is a $15,000 budget movie and stuff like that. So I think with a little bit more of a budget and stuff like that to go into it, I think it would actually be a pretty sweet thing to actually see. But I understand, given the circumstances, you might not be able to show that. But that's just a little something that I would like to see. But also, too, the poacher to me, the lead poacher, in my opinion, didn't work for me. And the reason why he didn't really work for me, he was supposed to be this badass poacher, like you would actually see from Lake Placid, for example, because of the fact that he was so used to capturing alligators that you actually believe it, and then also too the traps that that person used and stuff like that they actually showed it. With this one, it doesn't really show that he's a badass. He actually gets ripped open by Sasquatch and gets injured, and then you also have the partner of the poacher carrying him. He goes, "Man, you're such a badass." I'm like, "What? He's bleeding, dude. What do you mean by he's a badass? He's a badass because he's still alive." I wanted to see a little bit more of a build up into what how he's a badass. I wanted to see him do more poachers like stuff and things like that. And like I said, a little bit more of a budget. I think this thing would have extra budget and everything. This thing would have actually worked for me. And I know that I seem like I'm getting kind of negative or whatever, but I just wish that I could actually see a little bit more of that. But being a fan of Jason and everything, I'm sure that he would actually do that as well for not only for me but for everybody who views this movie as well. So that's a little bit of a nitpick thing too with the poacher, the lead poacher. Then the Indian curse thing that the lead poacher winds up talking about, where Jason is basically cursed to the land of Camp Crystal Lake because it's his Indian burial ground and stuff like that. Now, I do like that twist to it because I never saw in a Friday the 13th movie where they incorporate the Indian burial grounds or anything like that. So I thought that was actually pretty neat on how they actually brought that up. So I thought that was a very cool creativity behind that. And I really have to say, I thought that was really cool. And then, of course, let me just tell you this too. There's also, to me, looks like a little bit of Evil Dead in there mixed with Jason Goes to Hell as well. But there's actually a book of the dead that that they actually have in the movie that actually connects them with the story from that legend that the Indian guy is actually saying. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. But yeah, I just didn't. That part actually works for me. That's actually the positive part of it. Then of course there's also another scene, and I'm jumping around a bit, but there's a scene where this girl goes down on the guy, and Jason cuts off her head, and then there's also the part where, of course, she winds up spitting out the guy's scrotum and the head of it, and then after that, you see the brutal scene. She spits it out, and then after that, he's stabbed in the ground, and that's also a very cool thing that they actually that he does. Not saying that it's cool to actually do that to somebody when they're giving somebody else pleasure, but it's actually cool to actually see this little bit of a shout out to old slasher films, because sometimes they would actually pan the camera away and just do these upper body shots of them just stabbing somebody rather than actually showing the full content of it. So they kind of so Jason went all out with the special effects as far as that part goes, which is something I really do appreciate. The fact that you actually do see the blade actually hitting something, and then you actually see the repercussions of the blade later in that scene. So that was actually pretty cool. I like that. I like the death scene on that. Then there's also the wish that Jason would have. Here's the thing. I wish that Jason would have gave more for the leader. Okay, so here's the thing. We have this great lead character, right, named Mark. I wanted to see more of Mark basically owning Jason in a sense where he's not afraid of Jason anymore. And like I said, if it was a little bit more money, I'm sure that Jason would have actually put that in the film. But for me personally, whenever you're looking at story arcs, when you're looking at someone that has PTSD, nightmares, they want to come into terms with that person. This person doesn't want to come into terms with him or anything like that, even whenever he's faced up against him. But I wish that that would have actually kept maybe a little bit more layers to Mark. So that way, later on, if you want to make a sequel or something, you can actually keep Mark in there as one of the main people that actually survives. And then you can actually have the character arc build onto the second film. But for me personally, that didn't even that doesn't work for me, but it may work for somebody else. Um, then of course you see this other scene where basically you wind up seeing Chris Chrissy Chrissy and Mark finds Bigfoot in the middle of the road, and then what does Chrissy do? She winds up putting Sasquatch in the back of the trunk and goes back over to the camp where her friends are, and her friends are looking at her like she's crazy. Even I'm looking at her like she's crazy, like she lost her mind. Oh, we got to help this thing because of the fact that he got injured because the poacher shot him and he's sleeping. No, you don't. You just need to leave him there and just go back home. That's just my thoughts. But I understand what Jason was doing, and that part worked for me because the friends were actually saying what the audience is actually saying. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. But then you also see the full details the, of course, of the Sasquatch. And like I said, a little bit more extra special effects within the Sasquatch itself, but still, as far as the threat being the Sasquatch itself, I thought the threat was actually pretty cool to actually see because I think that having that threat there was really good. I feel like that Sasquatch was actually threatening. So, despite the fact that some people may not like how he looks, I do feel like that he was at least threatening from different camera lenses, different angles that Jason was actually doing. So, with that, that actually works for me. But when you see your friends telling you no, this is not a good idea, but also know what Jason was doing, and what Jason was doing was saying, you know what, maybe with Chrissy taking Sasquatch in, it might act, and this is what I was thinking though too. It might actually be where Sasquatch might protect the whole entire crew, but no, he winds up killing one of the friends. Then he winds up leaving, and then after that winds up happening, um, then after that, we wind up seeing the lead poacher. Something happens to him, and then we wind up seeing the other friend. And then there's also this other part where Lance and Jason fight. Okay, here's the thing. I thought the Lance and Jason fight actually worked. I thought that was cool to see an alpha male try and take down Jason, and I thought the fight choreography really landed for me. It's just for me, the mixing of that and not having the full on effect for it didn't really actually work for me because I wanted to hear the blade go in. I didn't actually hear any kind of sound effects or anything like that to where you can feel something that's actually painful going into somebody. But that's just the way I looked at it. And then also too, there's also Jason kills. Okay, that's like I said before. Jason kills lead too early, leaves side characters alive. So another thing that I want to mention is this. So when we get into Chrissy and stuff like that, you do have that redeemable moment where basically Sasquatch winds up protecting her from the poacher from Sasquatch. But all in all, this movie's okay, but it needs a little bit more sound effects, especially the part where Jason is stepping on the police officer's head, and there's no sound effect for it. And there's also another part where he's supposed to be squeezing the police officer's eyes, which we see in every single Jason movie whenever he does that. And I didn't feel any type of way, anything. I didn't feel anything for the cops or anything like that. And even though that there's kind of secondary, I would love to see the sound effects for that to allow some type of pain, some type of emotion going within that scene itself. But that's just the way I look at it. But anyways, guys, that's gonna be it as far as this review goes. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe button on the button below. Don't forget to comment below. Also, too, don't forget tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm going to be doing my Stranger Things season 4 review, part 1, volume 1, with Tamika from Two Blur Girls podcast, and I also have Western reviews with me reviewing that film. So always until next time, or TV show, and always until next time,